We already hired the contractor. My son said it the way he reads off a to-do list, matter of fact, no preamble. He set his coffee mug on my kitchen table and looked at me as if this were already settled. They come Monday, Mom. The whole side yard will be clean concrete. You'll have real parking space. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Evelyn. I am 73 years old, and I have lived in this house since I was 42. 31 years with Gerald. 4 years without him. The house is too quiet in ways I've stopped trying to explain to people who haven't lost a long marriage, but it is still my home. Gerald found the idea at breakfast, which is where he found most of his best ideas. He came to the table one October morning with a printout from a nature magazine and set it beside my coffee cup without a word. It was about monarch butterflies, how their population had fallen by more than 80% in 3 decades, quietly, while the rest of us weren't paying attention. There was a box at the bottom of the article about how ordinary homeowners could help. He looked up at me over his reading glasses and said, "We have that whole strip of side yard." I said, "Gerald, I don't know anything about milkweed." He said, "Neither do I. Yet." We spent nearly a year learning before we planted a single thing. We ordered seeds from 3 different suppliers and read about which milkweed varieties were native to our region. We attended a seminar at the Botanical Garden an hour away. We applied for certification through Monarch Watch, an organization based at the University of Kansas that officially designates and registers butterfly way stations. The application required documentation and proof that the habitat met specific ecological standards. 2 years after we started, we were approved. Gerald hung the small metal certification sign on the fence post himself on a Tuesday afternoon in May. He stood back and wiped his hands on his jeans. He said it was the most useful thing he'd ever built. He was gone the following spring. The monarchs came anyway that October. Hundreds of them settled into the milkweed in the quiet of a Tuesday afternoon, their wings opening and closing before they continued south. I sat on the porch steps and cried in a way I hadn't let myself since the funeral. It was the most connected to Gerald I had felt since the hospital. I have tended that garden every year since. I know every plant in it the way you know family, by its particular habits, its particular needs. I never thought anyone would ask me to tear it out. Dale moved in next door in February. Mid-50s, confident handshake, a truck that barely fit in his driveway. He waved when he saw me, asked once about the trash pickup schedule, and I had no particular feelings about him. Then May came, and the milkweed started growing. What most people don't understand, milkweed in early spring is not an elegant plant. It shoots up fast and a little wild before it fills in and blooms into something remarkable. I know exactly how it looks in April. I know what is coming. Dale did not know what was coming. He knocked on my door on a Wednesday afternoon, arms loosely crossed, squinting at the side yard past my shoulder. "That whole stretch there," he said. "What exactly is going on with it?" I told him. Butterfly way station. Native plants. Monarch Watch certified. My late husband and I had built it together, and the monarchs came every October on their migration south. It had been official for 9 years. He gave me a slow nod. "The kind that means nothing. It just looks like a weedy mess right now," he said. "My wife sees it from the kitchen window every morning. It's not exactly a nice view." I told him to wait until June. I told him about the butterflies in October. "Sure," he said, and went back to his yard. I should have understood exactly what that sure meant. What arrived in my mailbox 6 weeks later made it clear. A letter from the Homeowners Association. Dale, it turned out, was on the board, something I had not known. The letter cited unmaintained vegetation inconsistent with community appearance standards and eyesore growth adjacent to shared property line. 30 days to comply or face a fine. I read it 3 times standing at the mailbox. Then I went inside and called Marcus. Marcus is my son. He is 51, organized, and careful. He drove over that weekend and walked the garden with me while I explained everything, the certification, the ecology, what Gerald and I had built together year by year. He nodded in all the right places. I thought he understood. I was wrong about that. He came back 3 weeks later with Sandra, his wife. And with Dale. I watched the 3 of them through the front window, Marcus and Dale at the garden gate, Dale gesturing at the smooth concrete of his own driveway, Marcus with his hands in his pockets nodding slowly. My stomach went tight. Marcus sat across from me at the kitchen table and spoke in his measured way. Dale's contractor had leftover paving material at a good price. If I cleared the garden, they could pour clean concrete over the whole side yard. Better parking. Cleaner look. Easier for everyone. Mom, he said, the garden is a lot for you to maintain at this point. I built it with your father, I said. Sandra looked at the table. Marcus looked at the window. I asked them both to go home. That night I sat alone in the kitchen for a long time. Not crying. Just sitting with the quiet, thinking clearly. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to fight the HOA through lawyers or send Marcus long emails that would be skimmed and not answered. I wasn't going to stand at anyone's dinner table and explain the importance of milkweed to people who had already decided what they were going to do. I was going to be patient. The way the garden is patient. I had been part of an online forum through Monarch Watch for years, way station holders across the country who traded planting tips and shared migration reports. That night I posted a message describing the garden, the certification, the HOA letter. I asked whether anyone had connections to local media or conservation groups who might want to cover the fall migration story. Within 48 hours, I had 3 contacts. One was a woman named Pat, a retired biology teacher who volunteered with a regional nature conservancy. Pat knew a producer at the local news station named David, who had done a segment on native pollinators the previous spring and was actively looking for more nature stories. I sent David a short, careful email. I attached a photograph of the garden in full bloom from August, the milkweed tall, the wildflowers wide open, the whole stretch alive with color. I attached the Monarch Watch certification. I attached the HOA letter. I mentioned that the monarch migration typically peaked in our area in early October. David replied within 24 hours. He wanted to come in September. I did not tell Marcus. I did not tell Dale. I just watered the milkweed every morning and waited. A reporter named Claire came on a Tuesday in late September with a camera operator. We walked the garden together in the cool morning light. She asked about the certification, about Gerald, about what a backyard way station actually contributes. I answered everything. Then she asked about the HOA letter. I handed her a printed copy. She read it standing in the milkweed, the camera running. Her expression changed only slightly. Then she walked across the yard and knocked on Dale's door. I stayed where I was. I wasn't needed for that conversation. The segment aired on a Thursday evening. 6 minutes. They showed the garden in bloom, the certification plaque, the small green sign on the fence post. Claire's voiceover described a widow who had built a certified wildlife habitat with her late husband and was now facing fines for maintaining it. The HOA letter appeared on screen, word for word. They did not name Dale. They didn't need to. My phone rang all day Friday. Neighbors. People from the butterfly community in 3 states. A woman who said she was starting her own way station because of the story. The Regional Conservancy offered volunteers to help expand the plantings in spring. The HOA reversed the violation notice by Friday afternoon, copied to every board member. Marcus called on Saturday. He was quiet for longer than usual. "Mom," he said. "I didn't understand what the garden was. I knew it was Dad's, but I didn't really get it." I let him sit with that for a moment. "The Monarchs come in October," I said. "Bring the kids." The whole family came on a Saturday afternoon 2 weeks later. We stood together in the side yard, Marcus and Sandra and their 2 children, and watched hundreds of orange wings move slowly through the milkweed. My granddaughter is 8. She stood still for almost 10 minutes without saying a word, just watching. She asked me afterward if Grandpa Gerald knew the butterflies would keep coming back every year. I told her that was exactly what he had been counting on. Dale sold his house the following spring. I don't know where he went. The new neighbors have a young daughter who visits the garden fence with her mother on weekday mornings and says butterfly perfectly clearly, even though she is only 4. The sign is still on the fence post. I cleaned it last week, same as every spring. Gerald hung it there. Tell me in the comments, is there something you built with someone you loved that you would refuse to give up, no matter who asked?